Overheard my fiancée tell her friends I was too soft compared to her abusive ex, so I secretly started setting boundaries and going to the gym. But when I heard her mocking my changes and calling them a phase she could control, I cancelled our entire wedding the next morning. I never thought I would be writing this, but here I am 3 months before my wedding and everything has changed. My fiancée Emma and I have been together for 2 years and engaged for 8 months. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue and I thought she was perfect for me because she seemed sweet and kind and we had so much in common with our love for hiking and cooking and old movies. Last Tuesday I came home early from work because I had a headache and my boss told me to take the afternoon off. I parked in the driveway and heard voices coming from the backyard where Emma was having her monthly girls' day with her 3 best friends Sarah, Jessica, and Michelle. I was going to go say hello, but then I heard Emma talking about relationships and something made me stop and listen from behind the sliding door that was cracked open. Sarah was complaining about her boyfriend Mark being too clingy and always wanting to talk about feelings. Then Jessica started laughing and said at least Mark has some backbone, unlike some guys who are just pushovers. Emma laughed too and said she knew exactly what Jessica meant. Then she said I was too soft and boring compared to her ex-boyfriend Derek, who knew how to be a real man and take charge of situations. She said Derek would never ask her opinion on every little thing like where to eat dinner or what movie to watch because he just made decisions and expected her to follow along. Michelle asked if she missed Derek and Emma said she missed how exciting he made her feel even though he was terrible to her. She said Derek would grab her wrist when she tried to walk away during arguments and pin her against the wall and tell her she was not going anywhere until they finished talking. Sarah gasped and said that sounded awful, but Emma laughed and said it was awful but also thrilling because Derek never let her get away with anything and always kept her in line. She said I'd let her walk all over me and never challenge her on anything, which makes her feel like she could do whatever she wants without consequences. Jessica said Emma should train me to be more assertive, but Emma shook her head and said she tried dropping hints for months but I was hopeless. She said Derek used to throw things when he got angry and slam doors and raise his voice until she backed down and apologized even when she did nothing wrong. Emma said she knew Derek was abusive and controlling, but part of her missed feeling like she was with a man who could not be manipulated or convinced to change his mind about things. She said I was like a golden retriever who just wanted to make everyone happy all the time. The girls kept laughing and Emma said she loved me and I was good for her in the long run, but sometimes she fantasized about what it would be like to be with someone who had more backbone and could put her in her place when she got out of line. Michelle said maybe Derek was not totally wrong about some things and Emma agreed. She said Derek always told her she was too mouthy and needed to learn when to shut up and listen, and maybe he had a point about that. I stood there for another 10 minutes listening to them talk about how I was too gentle and accommodating and how Emma sometimes felt like she was dating her little brother instead of a grown man. Emma said she was hoping marriage would change me somehow and make me more territorial and possessive, but she was starting to doubt that would happen. She said her sister told her I seemed like the type who would let his wife cheat on him and then apologize for not being a better husband. I finally went inside through the front door and pretended I had just gotten home. I called out hello and Emma came running in from the backyard acting all excited to see me and asking about my day. She hugged me and kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted to order Chinese food for dinner. I said sure and acted normal, but inside I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and knocked all the air out of my lungs. That night Emma cuddled up to me on the couch while we watched Netflix and kept running her fingers through my hair and telling me she loved me, but all I could think about was her saying she wished I was more like Derek, who used to grab her and pin her to walls and throw things when he got angry. I tried to push the conversation out of my mind, but it kept playing over and over again, especially the part where she said I let her walk all over me and never challenge her on anything. The next few days I kept watching Emma and noticing things I had never paid attention to before, like how she would interrupt me when I was talking or change plans we had made without asking me first or assume I would just go along with whatever she wanted to do. I started realizing that maybe she was right about me being too accommodating. I never argued with her about anything because I thought that was what good boyfriends did, but maybe I was just being a pushover like her friend said. I also started thinking about Derek and what Emma had told me about their relationship when we first started dating. She said he was controlling and mean and used to yell at her for stupid things like leaving dishes in the sink or coming home 10 minutes late from work. She said he would give her the silent treatment for days when he was angry and make her beg for forgiveness even when she had not done anything wrong. She said he was jealous and paranoid and would go through her phone and interrogate her about every guy she talked to. But now I was wondering if there were parts of the story Emma had left out or changed to make Derek sound worse than he really was. Maybe he was not just some crazy abusive boyfriend, but someone who actually stood up for himself and did not let Emma manipulate him the way she manipulated me. I started feeling angry that Emma had been lying to me about what she really wanted in a relationship. She had been pretending to love how kind and gentle I was while secretly wishing I was more like the guy who used to grab her and pin her to walls. I decided I needed to make some changes and show Emma that I was not the pushover she thought I was. I was not going to let her keep walking all over me and treating me like some pathetic golden retriever who would do anything to make her happy. I knew I had to be smart about this and not just start yelling at her or throwing things like Derek used to do, but I could definitely start standing up for myself more and setting some boundaries that she would have to respect. The first thing I did was join a gym because I wanted to get stronger and look more intimidating. I had always been pretty skinny and Emma was always making jokes about how I needed to eat more protein and lift weights. I signed up for a membership at the CrossFit place near my office and started going every morning before work. The workouts were brutal, but I liked how sore and tired I felt afterward because it made me feel like I was actually doing something to improve myself. I also started saying no to Emma when she wanted to do things I did not want to do, like when she wanted to go to her cousin's baby shower on a Saturday when I had planned to work on my car in the garage. Before I would have just sucked it up and gone to the baby shower because I knew it would make Emma happy, but this time I told her she could go by herself because I had other plans and I was not changing them for some baby shower where I did not know anyone. Emma looked shocked when I said that and asked if I was feeling okay. She said I never said no to social events and asked if something was bothering me. I told her nothing was bothering me, but I was not going to drop everything just because she wanted me to go somewhere. I said she was perfectly capable of going to family events by herself and I did not need to be attached to her hip every weekend. She got quiet and nodded, but I could tell she was confused and maybe a little upset. She kept looking at me weird for the rest of the day and asking if I was sure everything was fine. I said everything was fine, but I was done being a pushover who said yes to everything just to avoid conflict. I told her real relationships required both people to have opinions and boundaries instead of one person just going along with whatever the other person wanted. Emma said she never asked me to be a pushover and she had always encouraged me to speak up if I disagreed with something, but I knew that was not true because every time I had tried to express a different opinion in the past she would get upset and make me feel guilty for not supporting her. I told her that was exactly what I was talking about and she needed to stop making me feel bad for having my own thoughts and preferences. Over the next few weeks I kept going to the gym and I started seeing results. My arms and chest were getting bigger and I was feeling more confident about how I looked. Emma noticed the changes and said she was proud of me for sticking with a workout routine, but she also seemed confused about why I was suddenly so focused on getting muscular when I had never cared about that stuff before. I also kept setting boundaries and refusing to just go along with everything Emma wanted, like when she wanted to spend $300 on new curtains for the living room without discussing it with me first. I told her we needed to talk about big purchases before making them and $300 was too much to spend on curtains when we were saving money for the wedding. She got angry and said the curtains were on sale and we would miss the deal if we waited to discuss it. I said the deal was not worth spending money we had not budgeted for and if she wanted new curtains she could find cheaper ones or wait until after the wedding when our finances were more settled. Emma started arguing with me and saying I was being unreasonable and controlling. She said the curtains would improve the whole look of the living room and $300 was not that much money in the grand scheme of things. I stayed calm and told her the answer was no and that was final. I said if she bought the curtains anyway I would return them to the store myself. Emma stared at me like she had never seen me before and asked where this attitude was coming from. She said I was acting like a completely different person and she did not understand why I was being so difficult about everything lately. I told her I was not being difficult but I was done letting her make all the decisions in our relationship without considering my input. I said real partners discuss things before spending money or making plans and I was tired of being treated like my opinion did not matter. Emma said my opinion had always mattered to her but I was taking this whole thing too far and turning into someone she barely recognized. But I could tell she was also impressed despite being frustrated. She kept staring at my arms when she thought I was not looking and touching my chest when we were lying in bed at night. She also stopped interrupting me as much when I was talking and started asking for my opinion before making plans, like when her friend Jessica invited us to a wine tasting event and Emma actually asked if I wanted to go instead of just assuming I would say yes. I was feeling good about the changes I was making and I thought Emma was starting to respect me more even though she was clearly confused about my new attitude. But then her mother Linda started getting involved and asking questions that made me realize Emma had been talking to her family about my behavior. Linda called me one evening when Emma was at her book club and asked if everything was okay between Emma and me. She said Emma had mentioned that I was going through some kind of phase and acting different than usual. Linda said she was concerned because Emma seemed stressed and confused about our relationship. She said Emma had always bragged about how sweet and accommodating I was and now she was worried that I was becoming more aggressive and demanding. I told Linda that I was not becoming aggressive but I was learning to stand up for myself and set healthy boundaries. I said Emma and I were both adults who needed to communicate better about our needs and expectations. Linda said she understood that, but she was worried I was trying to change Emma or control her behavior. She said Emma had been in an abusive relationship before and she was sensitive to men who tried to dominate her or make her feel small. I got angry and told Linda that I would never try to control Emma or make her feel small. I said I was just refusing to be a doormat anymore and if that made Emma uncomfortable then maybe she needed to examine why she preferred men who let her walk all over them. Linda got quiet and said she did not mean to offend me but she wanted to make sure Emma was safe and happy. She said Emma had been through a lot with her ex-boyfriend Derek and it took her a long time to trust men again. I said I understood that, but Emma was not some fragile victim who needed to be protected from her own fiancé setting reasonable boundaries. I told Linda that maybe she should ask Emma why she missed being with someone who used to grab her and pin her to walls instead of worrying about me going to the gym and having opinions about how we spend money. Linda sounded shocked and asked what I meant by that, but I realized I had said too much and told her she would have to ask Emma about it herself. I hung up the phone and felt angry that Emma had been talking to her mother about our relationship problems instead of just talking to me directly. I also felt angry that Linda was treating me like some potential abuser when all I was doing was trying to be more assertive and confident. Update: 2 weeks later I was putting my gym bag in the car when I heard Emma talking on the phone in the kitchen with the window open. She was talking to her sister Kelly and I could hear everything they were saying. Kelly was asking about wedding planning and how things were going with me. Emma laughed and said things were interesting lately because I was going through some kind of midlife crisis even though I was only 28 years old. Emma told Kelly that I had been acting like a tough guy and trying to be all dominant and masculine. She said it was actually pretty funny watching me try to be someone I was not because I was naturally too gentle and sweet to pull off the bad boy thing. Kelly laughed and said maybe I was just nervous about the wedding and trying to prove something to myself, but Emma said she thought it was more than that and I was probably feeling insecure about something. Emma said she could train me back to being manageable after we got married and the stress of wedding planning was over. She said men always got weird ideas about being the boss of the house, but they usually settled down once they realized their wives were not going to put up with that nonsense. Kelly asked if Emma was worried about me changing permanently and Emma said she was not worried at all because I was too much of a people pleaser to stay difficult for very long. Emma said she knew exactly how to handle me and make me feel guilty for being unreasonable. She said all she had to do was cry a little bit and tell me I was scaring her and I would go back to being my normal accommodating self within a few days. Kelly said Emma was smart to have a plan for dealing with difficult behavior and Emma agreed. She said she learned a lot about managing men from watching her friends deal with their boyfriends and husbands. Emma told Kelly that the gym thing was actually working out well because I was getting more attractive and muscular. She said she did not mind me being more physically fit as long as I did not think it meant I could start bossing her around or making all the decisions in our relationship. Kelly said Emma should enjoy the improved muscles while they lasted and then train me back to being sweet and manageable once we were legally married and I could not leave as easily. Both sisters laughed about that and Emma said marriage would definitely give her more leverage to shape my behavior. She said divorced men always got taken to the cleaners financially, so I would think twice about pushing back too hard once we were husband and wife. She said she loved me but she was not about to let me turn into some controlling husband who thought he could run the household. I stood there listening to them laugh about training me like some kind of dog and felt my face getting hot with anger. I could not believe Emma was talking about our relationship like it was some kind of game where she had to manipulate me into behaving the way she wanted. I realized that everything I had overheard 3 weeks ago was just the tip of the iceberg and Emma had been planning to control and manage me from the very beginning of our relationship. I also realized that Emma had never really loved me for who I was but had chosen me specifically because she thought I would be easy to manipulate and control. She wanted someone who would not fight back or challenge her the way Derek used to do, but she also missed the excitement of being with someone who could not be easily managed. I felt sick thinking about how Emma had been playing both sides and trying to have the best of both worlds while lying to me about what she really wanted. I went to work that day and could not concentrate on anything because I realized that Emma saw our upcoming marriage as a way to lock me down legally so she could control my behavior without worrying about me leaving her. I started thinking about all the ways Emma had manipulated me over the past 2 years and how I had been too blind and trusting to see what was really happening. That night I told Emma we needed to talk about our relationship and where things were heading. I said I had been doing some thinking about what I wanted in a marriage and I was not sure we were compatible in the long term. Emma looked confused and asked what I meant by that. She said we had always been compatible and we were getting married in less than 3 months, so it was a little late to be having doubts about our relationship. I told Emma that I had been learning a lot about myself lately and realizing that I needed a partner who respected my opinions and wanted me to be strong and confident. I said I was not interested in being with someone who wanted to manage my behavior or train me to be more accommodating. Emma asked where this was coming from and said she had never tried to manage my behavior. She said she loved me exactly the way I was and did not want me to change anything about myself. I looked at Emma and realized she was still lying to me even when I was giving her a chance to be honest about what she really wanted. I said I knew she had been talking to her sister about training me back to being manageable after we got married and I was not interested in being anyone's pet project. Emma's face went white and she asked how I knew about that conversation. I told her it did not matter how I knew, but I was tired of being lied to and manipulated. Emma started crying and said I was misunderstanding what she had said to Kelly. She said she was just joking around and did not mean anything serious by it. I told Emma that I had also heard her talking to her friends about how I was too soft and boring compared to Derek, who knew how to be a real man. Emma stopped crying and looked shocked that I knew about that conversation too. She said I was taking everything out of context and she never said she wanted me to be abusive like Derek. I told Emma that she was right and I would never be abusive like Derek, but I was also not going to be the doormat she had been looking for. I said she could find someone else to manipulate and control because I was done playing that role. Emma started crying harder and said I was being unfair and cruel. She said she loved me and wanted to marry me and she was sorry if she had said things that hurt my feelings. I told Emma that this was not about hurt feelings but about the fact that she had been lying to me about what she wanted in a relationship from the very beginning. I said she had chosen me because she thought I would be easy to manage, and now she was upset that I was refusing to play along with her game. I told Emma that I needed some time to think about whether I wanted to go through with a wedding. I said I was not sure I could marry someone who saw me as a project to be trained rather than a partner to be respected. Emma begged me not to make any hasty decisions and said we could work through this problem together. She said every couple had issues they needed to resolve and this was just one of those bumps in the road. But I knew this was not just a bump in the road because Emma had been planning to manipulate and control me for our entire relationship. I realized that she had never seen me as an equal partner but as someone she could mold into whatever she wanted me to be. I told Emma I would let her know what I decided about the wedding, and I went to stay at my friend Marcus's house for the night so I could think clearly without Emma trying to convince me to change my mind. Final update: the next morning I woke up and knew exactly what I had to do. I could not marry her. I called Emma and told her the engagement was off and I would be canceling the wedding. She started screaming and crying and begging me to reconsider, but I said my mind was made up and there was nothing she could say to change it. I spent the rest of that day calling all the vendors and canceling everything I could cancel. The venue said they would refund half of our deposit since we were canceling more than 60 days in advance, but we would lose the other half. The catering company said they would refund everything except the tasting fee we had already paid, and the photographer said she would refund our deposit minus a small administrative fee. Emma kept calling and texting me all day begging me to talk to her and work things out. She said she was sorry for everything she had said and she promised to be completely honest with me going forward if I would just give her another chance. I did not respond to any of her messages because I knew she was just trying to manipulate me into changing my mind and I was not going to fall for it again. That evening Emma showed up at my apartment with her father Robert, who started yelling at me before I even opened the door all the way. He said I was being ridiculous and immature and I needed to stop this nonsense immediately. Robert said Emma had told him everything and I was blowing things out of proportion because of some silly comments she had made to her friends. He said all women complained about their boyfriends sometimes and it did not mean anything serious. I told Robert that Emma had not just been complaining but had been planning to manipulate and control me throughout our entire marriage. I said she had chosen me specifically because she thought I would be easy to manage and train. Robert said that was crazy and Emma loved me and wanted to make me happy. He said I was throwing away a good relationship because of some misunderstanding that could be easily resolved. Emma was standing behind her father crying and looking pathetic, but I could see the anger in her eyes and I knew she was furious that I was not backing down and apologizing like she expected me to do. She kept trying to get me to look at her and listen to her side of the story, but I was done listening to her lies and excuses. Robert said I needed to pay them back for all the wedding expenses they had already covered, including Emma's dress and the flowers and the cake deposit. I told Robert that Emma and I had agreed to split all wedding costs 50-50 and I had already canceled everything I could cancel and would pay my share of any cancellation fees, but I was not responsible for paying back money they had chosen to spend on their own. Robert got angrier and said I was being selfish and irresponsible and I had led Emma on for 2 years just to break her heart 3 months before their wedding. I said I had not led Emma on, but she had led me on by pretending to want a partner when what she really wanted was a pet she could train to behave however she wanted. I told Robert that Emma had been planning to use our marriage as leverage to control my behavior and I was not interested in that kind of relationship. Robert said I was being paranoid and dramatic and Emma would never try to control anyone. He said Emma was the sweetest and most loving person he knew and I was lucky she had agreed to marry me in the first place. Emma finally spoke up and said she was sorry for everything and she would do whatever it took to fix our relationship. She said she would go to counseling with me and work on communication, and she promised never to try to manage or control my behavior. I told Emma it was too late for counseling because I had lost all trust in her and I could not marry someone who had been lying to me about her true feelings and intentions. Robert said I was making the biggest mistake of my life and I would regret this decision. He said Emma was a catch and I would never find anyone better than her. I told Robert he was right, that I would never find anyone like Emma again, and that was exactly what I was hoping for. I said I wanted a partner who respected me and valued my strength rather than someone who wanted to train me to be weak and accommodating. Emma started crying harder and said she did respect me and value my strength. She said she was proud of how I had been standing up for myself lately and she wanted me to keep being confident and assertive. I laughed and told Emma that I had heard her telling her sister about how she could train me back to being manageable after we got married. I said she was still lying to me even now when she had nothing left to lose. Robert looked confused and asked Emma what I was talking about. Emma got quiet and would not look at her father when he asked her to explain what I meant about training me to be manageable. I told Robert he should ask his daughter about her conversation with Kelly where they laughed about how marriage would give Emma more leverage to control my behavior. I said Emma had been planning to use our legal commitment as a way to manipulate me into being the pushover she really wanted. Robert turned to Emma and asked if what I was saying was true. Emma started crying again and said I was twisting her words and taking everything out of context. Robert looked disappointed and confused and said he did not understand what was happening or why everyone was so upset about some private conversations. He said women talked about their relationships all the time and it was normal for them to vent to their friends and family. I told Robert this was not about venting but about deliberate deception and manipulation. I said Emma had been pretending to love me for who I was while secretly planning to change me into someone completely different. Robert said that sounded extreme and maybe I was overreacting to some thoughtless comments, but I could tell he was starting to understand that this was more serious than he had initially thought. Emma said she was willing to do whatever it took to earn back my trust and prove that she really loved me. She said she would sign a prenup or go to therapy or whatever I needed to feel secure in our relationship. I told Emma that the problem was not about feeling secure but about the fact that she had never really loved me at all. I said she had loved the idea of having a boyfriend she could control and manipulate, but she had never actually wanted a real partnership with an equal. Robert said he thought we should all take some time to cool down and think about this situation more clearly. He said maybe Emma and I could work with a counselor to resolve our communication issues and rebuild our trust. I told Robert there was nothing to think about because my decision was final and I was not changing my mind. I said Emma could keep her ring and find someone else. Emma took off her engagement ring and threw it at me and said I was a coward who was running away from the first real challenge in our relationship. She said I would never find anyone who loved me as much as she did and I would spend the rest of my life regretting this decision. I picked up the ring and handed it back to her and said she was right that I would never find anyone who loved me the way she did and I was grateful for that because her kind of love was not something I wanted. Robert said I was being cruel and heartless and Emma deserved better than to be treated this way. He said Emma had made some mistakes but she was a good person who genuinely cared about me. I told Robert that Emma might be a good person but she was not a good partner for me because she did not want the same things I wanted in a relationship. I said she wanted someone to control and I wanted someone to respect me. They finally left after Robert said he would be calling me about the money they had spent on wedding preparations. He said I had a legal and moral obligation to reimburse them for expenses they had incurred based on my promise to marry Emma. I told Robert he could call whoever he wanted but I would not be paying for Emma's dress or flowers or cake when I had never agreed to cover those costs in the first place. After they left I felt exhausted but also relieved that I had finally stood up for myself and refused to be manipulated anymore. I knew I had made the right decision even though it was painful and difficult. I also knew that Emma would probably try to contact me again and convince me to change my mind but I was not going to let her back into my life no matter what she said or promised. I called my parents and told them the wedding was cancelled and I would explain everything later when I was ready to talk about it. My mother was shocked and asked if there was anything she could do to help but I said I just needed some time to process everything and figure out what I wanted to do next. My father said he was proud of me for standing up for myself and he would support whatever decision I made about my relationship. I realized that for the first time in 2 years I felt like myself again instead of feeling like some character Emma was trying to shape and mold into her perfect boyfriend. I had spent so much time trying to make Emma happy that I had forgotten what it felt like to have my own opinions and boundaries and goals. I was sad that our relationship had ended but I was also excited about the possibility of finding someone who would actually want to be with the real me instead of some trained version of me that they had created.